Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
At 11 o'clock, I'm Rory Smith in the GB newsroom. More than 1,888 people on 21 flights have been evacuated from Sudan, the majority of them being British nationals. The government says the final flight is yet to leave the airfield near Khartoum, even though it was scheduled for 6 o'clock this evening. Well, earlier, Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden held a Cobra meeting in Downing Street to discuss the security situation in the country. He said rescue operations ended following a significant decline in the number of British nationals coming forward to flee. Mr Dowden denied the government would abandon those who have been unable to make it to the airfield on time. The Prime Minister has hit out at protesters who slow traffic, calling them selfish saboteurs. Rishi Sunak told The Sun on Sunday that he wants to put a stop to those who use this tactic as it causes too much public disruption. Ministers plan to push through measures that will allow officers to stop activists slow walking after similar legislation was rejected by the Lords. But opposition parties accuse the Prime Minister of hollow promises and chasing headlines to distract from his failure to tackle crime. Protesters in Israel have blocked a busy highway as protests over the country's judicial overhaul continue. Activists have left the main routes of the demonstration to cause major disruption to motorists, where Israeli police are attempting to remove the protesters. Back in the main route, drone footage shows tens of thousands of people waving Israeli flags in a square in Tel Aviv in protest against plans by the country's government to have control over the appointment of judges. The Israeli president has urged both sides to reach a compromise in the 17th consecutive week of demonstrations. Great Ormond Street Hospital has been granted exceptions to allow nurses to continue working during upcoming strike action over the bank holiday. The Children's Hospital expressed concerns about staffing as Royal College of Nursing workers prepare to walk out from 8 p.m. tomorrow until Monday evening in their ongoing dispute over pay. It comes as health workers belonging to the GMB union accepted a 5% pay offer from the government yesterday. Union officials will now vote to accept the offer at a meeting of the NHS Staff Council next week. Representatives from the nation's faith communities will play an active role in the King's coronation for the first time in history. When King Charles is crowned next weekend, leaders from Jewish, Hindu, Sikh, Muslim and Buddhist groups will deliver a greeting to the King in unison. The Archbishop of Canterbury says the service will be foremost an act of Christian worship, but that new elements will reflect the diversity of modern society. Staying with royal news, and Buckingham Palace has unveiled the gowns that King Charles will wear for the coronation. One of the special garments is a gold silk coat trimmed with gold lace. It was originally made for King George's coronation in 1911. Well, some of the gowns haven't been worn in 70 years, since Queen Elizabeth's coronation in 1953. TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now though, it's time for headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Leo Kieras, and with me for a quick stroll through tomorrow's top news stories are the man himself, Steve N. Allen, and the woman herself, Cressida Wetton. How are you both doing?
Pretty good, yeah.
Right, cool. You don't sound very convincing. I mean, have you just had some bad news from a doctor, Steve?
No, there's a chance that was a really risky intro that you might have misgendered either one of us.
Yeah.
Because you never know. So, you know, if we're trying to get you cancelled, that would have been a good way to do it.
It's okay. This is GB News, not the Guardian TV. Anyway, let's have a quick look through tomorrow's front pages. The Sunday Telegraph has DeSantis, I support Badenoch in our war on wokery. The Observer has Starmer, I'll be bolder than Blair on public service reform. The Mail on Sunday has we are all invited to swear our allegiance to the King. The Sunday Times has Archbishop will ask millions to pledge allegiance to their King. The Sunday Mirror has £150 million on security, hikes up coronation bill. And finally, the Sunday Express has King's solemn vow to serve us all. Anyway, that's the front pages. And let's have a closer look at those front pages. What have they got in the front cover of the Sunday Telegraph, Steve?
Think about that DeSantis Badenoch story that you mentioned. I support Badenoch on a war on wokery. And this is where you get me doing my thing again. As soon as the word woke's used, we end up almost having a pointless discussion. It's a word that means opposite things to two different groups, which means any statement founded on it becomes circular logic. Woke's bad. What do you mean by woke?
I think we know what they mean by it. So they mean the weaponisation of victimhood to drive an agenda, and basically all the bad stuff like drag queens in schools, But
do you see the point, though, of saying, like, woke is bad, what does woke mean bad? Means you've got, at least, it's tautology.
Well, when does it ever? Tell me the good meaning of woke. I mean...
You know that some people think it's good, though.
No, some people say, it just means awareness of racial issues and social issues, which is, that would be great if that's what anybody ever took it to mean. But
there might be a chance that you don't move in the circles of people who think it means good things.
Yeah, but I don't move in the circles of idiots, because I'm not an idiot.
Oh, well, they're not mutually exclusive as concepts. But it won't matter because he won't end up as president. But it's nice that they have this discussion. It's nice that America, or someone in America who might have power, remembers that little old UK is a thing. Because for a while it feels like this special arrangement, this special relationship was kind of one way. We were slightly ghosted.
Yeah.
If we had a relationship, they'd moved on.
And Biden clearly doesn't care about us. When he was taking selfies with Jerry Adams, a man who was, responsible for murders and bombings and involved in all the IRA's activities.
Yeah, totally. I think DeSantis is a bigger fan of the UK, isn't he?
Just a shame he won't do anything, because Trump will definitely...
So it's all irrelevant.
It's all pointless.
You think Trump's definitely going to get in?
Well, in the polls, he's doing really well. It's like something ridiculous, like a 46-point lead or something over him.
Yeah, but I mean, he could go to jail.
But apparently, in their constitution, there's nothing to stop you running the country from your prison cell.
From jail. It's going to be like
style.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah.
It's just going to tweet.
Pablo Escobar.
Brilliant.
He's going to make some sort of luxurious jail cell and continue running his empire.
would love that.
His running mate will have to be Red from Shawshank. Just get him stuff.
Which I can see that happening. Anyway, moving on. Let's see what's on the front cover of the Observer, Cressida.
OK, Starmer, I'll be bolder than Blair on public service reform. Now, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Labour chief pledges aid to first-time buyers. Well, that sounds fantastic. I'm up for that. Are you both homeowners?
Oh, multiple.
Multiple, see, fantastic. OK. No, that sounds good. There's no detail here. Tuition fees revamp, though, among policy targets. I mean, revamp, be specific. More tuition fees or less? I think that's quite important. I'm going to assume less. And they've also got a story about women's rugby. We've won some rugby, apparently, which is very exciting. As you know, I'm a huge sports fan. We've won against the French, so that's good, isn't it? Are you rugby people?
No, but if it comes to women's rugby, still no.
But beating the French, I imagine you're in favour of.
No, I'm an enormous Francophile. I love nothing more than poor customer service and stepping in dog poop.
Fantastic. There's also a story about the Coast Guard leaving Channel migrants adrift. So this is in November, not a good time to be in the sea, 2021. 19 boats were left, so 440 people left adrift, and this is probably because of staffing levels.
So these were boats that had left from France to come to the UK, and obviously a lot of the time they see the Coast Guard as the people who pick them up and take them for the final leg of the journey.
Yeah.
So they were drifting. This is, I mean, it speaks to the sheer volumes of boats that have been setting off from France that there weren't enough Coast Guards to actually even deal with these calls.
Well, no, I think they're quite busy, aren't they? Maybe they were having a day off, I don't know. Yeah, so calls for more staff.
Have you got any opinions?
Well, firstly, I wouldn't have put that picture above that story because it kind of looks like they're celebrating people being adrift. That's just awkward for the front page. But also,
I mean, it's not the worst picture the Guardian's published.
Yeah, not this week. Yeah, but also on this story, it's very easy to get tribal. But actually, you can definitely be in favour of saying our migration situation is not good, and you don't like the idea of people being left adrift. This doesn't have to be one to have a row on.
Yeah, and I think even people who are trying to come here as economic migrants, I mean, I understand they want a better life for themselves. They want to come to the UK. I'm sure a lot of them would love to contribute. They're not all criminals and all the rest of it. So yeah, I mean, this is tragic whichever way you look at it. We really need to toughen up our border control to prevent the loss of life, as well as preserve our integrity. Moving on, what have the Mail on Sunday got in the front cover, Steve?
An offer, effectively, about the King. By the way, King Charles, you can see they've got the special You edition of the magazine where young Prince Charles looks more like John Travolta from Greece. But I do think if he's on the front page of that magazine, it shouldn't be called You, it should be called One. It was a simple error. I don't know why they didn't do it. But we are all invited to swear our allegiance.
Trust you to be pernickety about pronouns.
Yeah, exactly. My pronoun is One. He's got that sort of, doesn't he? But we can all swear allegiance to the King at home.
Right.
Nah, you're right, mate. It's not feudal times, so you crack on, pal. Have a good one. But it's really odd that we're all being invited to pledge allegiance.
But we're so good at this. This reminds me of the NHS, clapping for the NHS. It's like we're all doing it together in public. Once you've declared it in public, then you'll stick to it.
But will people do this? Will they actually come out and stand on the doorstep and declare their allegiance to King Charles?
Well, we'll find out, won't we?
Well, you're going to do it.
I'm going to stand... Well, I haven't got a real front door, but I'm going to stand...
That's the state of modern Britain. You don't even have a front door to declare your allegiance to the King.
But I'm going to stand in the doorway and I'm just going to wait and see what the neighbours do. I don't know.
OK, moving on. What's on the front of the Sunday Mirror, Cressida?
£150 million on security hikes up coronation bill. So that's quite a lot, isn't it? But I think this is going to be a relatively frugal coronation compared to times gone by. Are you aware of some of the historical examples of this? So this is an example from 1821. King George IV ascended the throne. He insisted on one of the most outlandish coronations in British history and insisted that everyone he ruled should be dressed in Tudor and Stuart period dress. which cost £45,000. But in those days, that was about 4 million in today's money. So my point is, historically, there have been some pretty crazy...
Well, 4 million in today's money. I mean, this one's going to cost 250 million in today's money. It's a bit more.
Well, apparently that's less than £3 per head. So
I'd rather have the £3. I could get a Tesco meal deal. Well, I could have last year before hyperinflation.
Well, yeah, this is it, isn't it? So it's bad taste. Whatever they spend, it's going to be bad taste in this climate, isn't it?
Well, is he chipping in to help? Because he's made a few quid off the back of the biscuits. So, you know, he's not poor. Maybe he could stump up a bit of this.
With that Duchy of Cornwall money? Yeah, I mean, that'd be nice to see. I mean, obviously, I don't grudge the royal family having a big occasion. It is it's not every week you have a new king. Yeah. So yeah, and obviously we're going to have heads of state from all around the world attending, and we need to make sure there's nobody, putting bombs in bins or anything like that. So we do need this security.
And also, it's good, isn't it? It's going to bring revenue, and the poor old pubs have had a very difficult few years. Yeah. And we're all going to go out and raise a glass, aren't we?
Well, yeah, and if 12 people get a round in, I think that's the cost covered at today's prices. Anyway, that's the front pages dealt with. Coming up, we've got edgy cartoons in The Guardian, police moving the goalposts, and a shadowy SNP plot. I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today. Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Leo Kearson, the comedian Steve N. Allen and Cressida Wetton, who we just learned doesn't have a front door. Anyway, Moving on, kicking things off with the Express, and the Guardian has gone from Dear Starmer to Dare Sturmer with this anti-Semitic cartoon, Steve.
Yeah, so they had a cartoon of ousted BBC chairman Richard Sharp. I think fair enough. Lots to lampoon there. I wonder what they went with. And wrong is what they went with. They went with anti-Semitic tropes. Why? There are so many other things. And actually, what annoys me about this story is that we could have spent the day talking about the actual issues. Instead, we've been talking about, is this anti-Semitic cartoon anti-Semitic? It is.
We've got a picture of the cartoon there, so you can't see. It's all in the bottom left-hand corner. You don't really notice the anti-Semitic tropes until you focus in on that box and what he's carrying. There we go, it's zoomed in. There's a squid. There's somebody with an enormous nose. I think there's gold coins in there. It's gold written on the box. There's a lot there to pick through.
And there's loads that they could have gone with. The actual news story is still shocking. So he helps to line up a loan which is guaranteed by some Boris Johnson cousin. But the question that's not answered is, where does the 0.8 million actually come from? We don't know that. Why don't we spend the day talking about that, which would be amazing? There's backbencher MPs who can't get a ticket to go to somewhere nice without having to register it. Meanwhile, the actual Prime Minister was like, 0.8 million, go on then, back pocket. Well, we're not talking about that because they foolishly and stupidly did this cartoon, which they shouldn't have done.
Not to defend him, but the artist has explained that he didn't intend any of... Oh, I thought the picture was still there. It isn't. He said that only 3% of the cartoon was...
anti-Semitic.
Which I don't think he's very good at maths.
No, that's not. 3% anti-Semitic.
The point he was making was that the bulk of the cartoon is Boris on the pile of... what's the right word to use? Excrement. Thank you. So he was defending it, saying that... Well, not defending it. He's saying he's not defending it. It was a terrible series of mistakes. But for him, he's saying that Boris on the pile and the bins are the important part of the cartoon.
Nobody's complaining about Boris on the pile. It's the anti-Semitic tropes. And we see it, and this wouldn't be such an issue if it wasn't recurrent through the left. You know, as espoused in the Guardian, they've been champions of momentum and Jeremy Corbyn. And, you know, we've seen how that ended.
Also, the argument of it's only a small part of it that's anti-Semitic is exactly the same argument from the day-to-day with Steve Coogan.
Oh, no, I thought it was hilarious. I thought it wasn't 3%.
No one died. that bit is exactly the argument here. This is one good thing about Rishi. At least we know no one's going to hold money over Rishi other than his wife.
Anyway, moving on, we've got the Telegraph now, and the police have found a way to bring down burglaries. They're going to stop recording them, Cressida.
Pretty much. Police move goalposts so they can count fewer burglaries. So essentially, a home burglary used to include anything that was part of your home. But now, there's potentially... We're not going to include sheds and outbuildings, which it turns out are a major part of burglaries, because typically, I don't know if you've done a lot of burgling, but you don't turn up with the equipment that you're going to use, because you could look guilty before you've done it. I think it's like in that Guy Ritchie, is it in Snatch, where you can't carry the tools of your crime with you.
So they break into the garden shed to get
so
the
it's a
crowbars
really important place. In addition to that, of course, now everybody's working from home, so sheds up and down the country have been turned into offices and are filled with laptops and IT equipment, apparently. So this is not good. And as you say, it just looks like it's going to look like better reporting. It looks like the numbers are going to go down, but in fact, they've just moved the goalposts.
Well, yeah, and the police have done this before. I mean, I know about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, they were trying to record attempted burglaries as criminal damage because it was just damage to the door and the door frame. So this is more of the same, Steve.
I think if they keep in this direction, we could really get the numbers down. If you stop including kitchens, no one lives in a kitchen. And the same thing, bathrooms, you're in there for, what, half an hour if you're having a good one. So you could really get it down to maybe just rooms with beds in them. Yeah. And then the number of cases would be minimal. Look how good this country is.
Well, there's a lot of people living in studio flats. It wouldn't help there, would it? But they don't have a shed either. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's the trouble with London. I mean, you've got like 3 people living to each room, so you're not going to be able to do a burglary anyway. We've got the Guardian now with some good news. The Democrats are setting up Trump to be the next president, Steve.
And America doesn't care, apparently. Biden v. Trump, the US is unenthused. The problem with that word is it's so close to euthanized. I really misread this headline. I wasn't sure what was happening. But they say, and this is in The Observer, the issue is that it's 2 old white men. I don't think that's why people are bored. It's the same sequel. It's like another film with Sylvester Stallone and Arnie in it. We get it.
Oh, that sounds good. Is it coming out soon?
It's coming out soon, I'm sure it is. So it's like Ross and Rachel. As soon as they've done it once, no one cared. So Joe, so old that if he does actually get a second term as VP, will probably be a psychic medium. But it's not just the age. He's actually managed to achieve some stuff, and if that's your political persuasion, he's managed to pass some laws over there. But it's the fact that we're just rehashing the same fight again. It would be more interesting if younger people were in, but not just because their age is better, just because you don't want it to be the same. It's not going to be two other 86-year-olds having a go at it. So you just want freshness to American politics.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And Joe Biden's already come out. He's only just announced his campaign, and he's already come out and made this enormous gaffe saying, I'm not going to get re-elected. Vote for Donald Trump. That's basically he said we should all vote for Donald Trump. It was something along those lines. It's amazing. I've got the video on my Twitter.
It's exciting because we don't know if he's going to make it or not. I mean, there's already something for the bookies there, isn't there? And if he doesn't, well, then you've got a woman of colour coming in anyway. So there's still everything to play for.
Or a man of colour if it's Donald Trump. It's just not a colour that anybody's seen before. But I mean, it's interesting that The Guardian managed to, on top of being anti-Semitic today, they managed to be ageist and racist with this headline. It's two old white men.
Sexist.
And sexist. The triple, the triumvirate.
Fantastic.
Amazing stuff. Anyway, moving on, we've got The Observer now with what seems like cast iron proof that council staff have been slacking off, Cressida.
This is fantastic. An undeniable success. First UK council trial of 4-day week set to be extended. Can you believe it? A council has tried working a 4-day week, and in their opinion, it's been a raging success, and they'd like to do it for another 12 months. Isn't that amazing? I know what you're thinking. How do they get all their work done? Well, apparently there's been no drop in productivity levels.
Really? From 0 to 0?
Isn't that amazing? So 88.5% have said they like this, they'd like to carry on. Weirdly, 11.5% have said they don't like it. So is that unhappy marriages? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe there's a really good vending machine. I don't know.
I don't know. Fantastic. This even applies to bin men, which I think is... Because I think bin men look busy, don't they?
Well, yeah, and being a bin man, that's something that's measurable. The productivity there is measurable. When I worked for the council, there were a lot of people just shuffling papers around. It seemed to be some sort of pyramid scheme employment system for people who did terrible degrees.
But surely we're in favour of measuring output rather than input.
Yep.
So if they're right about the output, I mean, I'd be surprised to see if they manage it with the bin men, although they say they're going to get, like, AI to better plan the route. But that is one where, well, you could use that route anyway, and in 5 days you could cover more bins, and maybe we don't have to wait 2 weeks before all the bins are collected. Why do I have to live in my own filth? But if you actually are working in an office, as long as you're getting the output done, it should be about measuring the work that's done, not measuring your control over your minions.
But isn't it obvious that they just weren't working very hard before? And they even said...
80%.
The council's leader said it's a gift for working much more intensely and working smarter. Why were you not working more intensely and working smarter before? That's what most people do in their jobs. That's ridiculous.
But they're tired from all the previous 4 days' work, so that fifth one, they really just can't achieve much.
I don't know. Anyway, the Sunday Express reveals that the brave vigilantes fighting back against Sadiq Khan's hated ULEZ scheme, they're sort of like Robin Hood, but better, Steve.
They're called Blade Runners as well, which is going to be a trademark issue, but fair enough. This gang of people are challenging the ULEZ cameras by attacking them. And firstly, I'm not in favour of criminal damage. Ofcom, note that down. I'm also not in favour of expanding ULEZ. I mean, I grew up in the 90s, so ULEZ used to be a playground insult. But now it's moved to become... I'm OK with getting out my car, but don't price me out my car. Tempt me. I'm there to be tempted. But what they're doing is they're attacking the cameras that clock which cars go where, and then they know the type of car through various techniques. One Blade Runner said they use the various techniques of cutting, hammering, painting, disabling, unbolting and snipping.
Right.
So just damaging the thing. You didn't make a list. We get the idea.
Sounds like something you do after you'd broken into somebody's garden shed and stolen some tools.
There's a lot of advice here tonight, isn't there, for people for new life skills? Yeah, fantastic. One guy says he's personally stolen 34 ULEZ cameras already, so if you get offered one in a pub for a cheap price, I guess you know where it came from.
If you want to set up your own scheme in your neighbourhood. Anyway, moving on, we've got the Sunday Times now with an attempted coup in an impoverished, sectarian, failed state run by an egotistical Muslim man. No, it's not Sudan, it's Scotland, Cressida.
revealed the SNP plot to oust Humza Yousaf. Supporters of Kate Forbes are secretly organising a shadow government as part of preparations to launch a coup against Humza Yousaf. So they're saying that she won't, but apparently there are secret talks going on that only we know about. Forbes is, like previously, you know, she's had a small team. Her husband was her driver. She hasn't had a lot of resources, but she's been very successful. I don't know. Looks like she might be coming back again.
Yeah, but she only just lost to the incumbent,
Right.
to the preferred candidate who's pushed by Sturgeon. He won by 52 to 48. So I mean, obviously, the sort of, it seems like the sentiment of the people is for Kate Forbes. We should probably point out that when we talk about a coup in Scotland, it's an actual coup, like a subversion of power, rather than a cow.
I remember when 48-52 was considered to be an overwhelming majority, wasn't it?
Well, Humza actually, I think he denied the validity of the Brexit vote because it was so close, and he was very quiet. He was very quiet about that same ratio in his own vote.
I think it will be fascinating if we find out even more scandal, then maybe that will impact his continuity candidate legacy, I suppose, and they could win the title, the record for most leaders deposed in the shortest time, currently held by the Tories just last year.
OK, right, this part is over, but coming up we've got Britain's shocking lack of racism, climate anxiety sending kids mental, and why the BBC needs more British accents. See you in a couple of minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, and let's get straight back to it with the Metro, who have some bad news for grifters like Dr. Shola Moss-Shogbamimu, who depend on racism to make money. There's not that much of it left, Cressida.
Study finds UK among the world's least racist countries, but it has flaws. So this study, they've spoken to citizens from the countries were asked to vote on who they wouldn't want to have as a neighbour, which is... I find that an extraordinary question. I don't know whether they're asking them face-to-face or if this was anonymous.
Was it Lewis Schaefer?
Well, it turns out 5% of Brits are saying they would not want immigrants or foreign workers. Meanwhile, Iran, Russia and Japan had higher intolerance levels at 42, 32 and 30% respectively. So that's a lot less here, isn't it? Just 5%.
Yeah.
I have to say, I'm stunned that 5% of people would say that.
Well, yeah, I mean, this seems to possibly reflect the fact that, I mean, as well as reflecting that we're less racist than we used to be and less racist than a lot of other countries, people are scared to answer questions like this, is what I took away from this this questionnaire as well. Because if somebody phones you up and is like, so, yeah, have you got any racist opinions? Man, you'd be worried you're going to end up in a database and, you know, for committing a hate crime.
Although this was anonymously done, so I think maybe people would have been more likely to be truthful than if you stopped in the street with a clipboard and they go, what are your favourite racist terms?
How long have you got?
This story is one of those where if we could just remember that two things could be true at the same time, then we wouldn't go into the obvious argument that will happen. So study finds that we're one of the least racist countries and racist things still happen. Both possible, both exist, and yet people will separate into the, oh, racist things can't happen, we're one of the least racist countries, come on.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the other side of the debate goes, what do you mean, how could we be the least racist country? Racist things happen. They're both true at the same time.
Oh, come on, Steve, how can you say that racist things happen? We're one of the least racist countries.
Exactly. Look at that. You should write that as a column.
But don't you think that, I mean, there's a lot of claims of racism, but I think racism is a lot more nuanced than prejudice is a lot more nuanced than people look at things like class and appearance, you know, your manner, the way you're acting, and judge you on that more than skin colour.
Well, yeah, and as usual, we don't get a definition of racism. And I always find that amazing because it's such an important point, isn't it? What do you think racism is? Because I think sometimes when people get offended by stuff like this, the kind of people you're referring to, they're thinking about very aggressive, very violent things. And then other people are talking about microaggressions and much more minor things. And so that's part of the argument, isn't it?
Well, if people are worried about microaggressions, they should come to Scotland and see a full-size aggression. Anyway, moving on, we've got the Sunday Times now, and eco-warriors aren't just costing us money and ruining our energy policy, they're also terrifying our children, Steve.
Yeah, apparently these climate worries are impacting children's mental health. Don't worry about it, it's not the end of the world. Oh, hang on. This is Dr. Britt Ray, a mental health researcher from Stanford University, believes that children should be taught to deal with eco-anxiety, and here's my favourite thing, have a Goldilocks level of anxiety. Firstly, that's going to make the kids go, oh, I forgot about bear attacks, cheers. But also, they want them to have anxiety. Instead of just going, we know there's a problem and let's work on ways of fixing it. No, be anxious about it. Suffer, but don't suffer too much that it's bad for your mental health. These young people need to be taught about a group of people I like to call Generation X, that I belong to. And we get a lot of bad press. People forget about one thing that happened. The hole in the ozone layer.
Yeah.
It happened. We fixed it. What have you ever fixed, Gen Z, apart from yourself to the surface of the M25?
Yeah.
We managed to do it, and we didn't get too mentally impacted by it.
Exactly. Yeah, the ozone layer was the climate change of its time, and yeah, we're still here. We're all still here. If anything,
hole's closed.
The hole's closed. We fixed the hole, probably. Nobody can tell. I mean, you can't even see it. Cresta, what do you make of this?
I remember being at school and having those little tiny magnets to test your drinks cans. Do you remember that?
Oh, to see if they're steel or aluminium?
Well, yeah.
Yes, and that was about as much as we knew as kids. And I'm interested in this idea of what's age appropriate. I mean, I don't know exactly, but if they're telling 5-year-olds that it's the end of the world, that's a bit dark.
Yeah, and this idea that there's a certain amount of anxiety that children should have about this stuff. I just remember when I was a kid, you get these crazy people saying, you know, with a sandwich board, saying the end of the world is nigh, standing with a big beard on the, Woolwich High Street or whatever, and screaming doom and belonging to a cult. And now those those people are setting government policy. It's like, what went wrong? It's absolutely insane. Anyway, moving on, we're staying with the climate change theme. We've got the Sunday Times with some great news. Global warming is making the globe warmer. Cressida.
April temperature records shattered across the world, except for London, I think. Thursday was a historic day when Spain, Portugal and Morocco all broke their national temperature records for April. They weren't just broken, they were shattered. So this is a very scary article. It's giving me a lot of eco-anxiety. It's a list of temperatures and showing how unusual they are.
Yeah. I mean, there was 11.1 degrees centigrade, and one of them, I mean, ooh, we're all going to burn. Ooh, 11.1
well, it's supposed to be
degrees.
0, so that's quite an increase.
Well, zero's worse. Zero, you're going to die. You're going to freeze to death. This is the thing, and this is a genuine, this is a true point. This isn't me being facetious or anything.
Surely
Cold weather kills a lot more people than hot weather. So by bringing the global temperature up, we're actually saving lives.
That's not a full analysis of... So the cold weather kills some people. By increasing it, you'd stop killing those people.
Yeah.
That's the end of your sentence, rather than, and does it kill anyone from being hot in
cold weather kills a lot more people.
But you don't know if the shift that you're talking about, how many it will save versus how many more it will kill.
Well, the cold
All you know
weather
is at the moment,
cold weather kills a lot more. It's like it's like the difference between crashing a jet ski and crashing a bus. There's more people on the bus, so it's worse.
No, but
also, you're thinking long term, aren't you? So your people aren't necessarily born yet.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, and also
so
I'm thinking rather than just this country, across the entire planet. Over a certain period of time, you don't know. You know that at the moment one number's bigger than another, but you don't know which number will change at a greater rate.
I don't trust scientists to tell me what things are going to be like in 40 years' time. I think that's...
But you're predicting the future in your statement. It's better if it changes, predicts the future.
I'm predicting that if we maintain our human rights, our individual freedoms, and maintain our standard of living, which is based on fossil fuels while we transition, we're gonna save a lot more lives than if we suddenly just stop all meat farming, stop all carbon fuel use.
And you can think that without having to try and disprove this story, which says there has been a change to the temperature of the planet.
Yeah, the weather's getting better.
Yeah, or it's
That's literally what this story says.
You say 0 degrees is worse than 11, unless you're a polar bear, in which case you really wish that 0 degrees would hang around.
Well, let's hope I don't turn into a polar bear.
You never know. You don't trust science, so for all you know, it might happen. But people dismiss individual events as just saying, well, it's a one-off. And if you do that to all of the stats, eventually you can't predict anything because you've dismissed all of the evidence to try and spot a trend.
I agree that it's getting warmer, the world is getting warmer. I disagree that that's entirely a bad thing. I think we can work within that, we can adapt to it, and we're going to have an optimum survival rate if we do that, as opposed to all this like shutting down. I mean, look what happened with Russia. When we stopped producing our own fossil fuels, when we just depended on Russia for oil and gas, then all of a sudden they had this lever that they could then use to punish us with, and you know, pay for an invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah, but when you said we could deal with the fact that the planet's getting hotter, that requires some sort of action to be taken, to observe how the change is occurring and act accordingly. So we almost could agree. I'm always trying to find these bits where we could agree.
But the action that we take shouldn't be handing the governments enormous amounts of money and enormous amounts of power to control us. That's what lockdown told me. Anyway, the Sunday Telegraph now, and a former BBC presenter has given us another reason not to pay the licence fee, Steve.
So there's a problem with not enough British accents on the news channel, but it's the new news channel, which has merged the global news channel and the UK news channel, and it's Simon McCoy who works here. I used to do some newspaper reviews with him in the morning. Seems like a nice chap.
Yeah,
so
he was great.
Reading this, thinking, OK, what's the point here about not enough British accents? Because I watched that channel and think, I hadn't noticed, maybe I just hadn't spotted the accents. He's talking about the overnight coverage, which comes from Singapore or Washington. And actually, if you have a channel that then becomes both the UK channel and the international channel, overnight, fewer people will be watching it here than they are elsewhere in the world.
Right.
But the problem is they shouldn't have merged the two channels. The BBC, whatever you think of it, if it's going to do its job, it needs a news channel for the UK.
Yeah.
So they shouldn't have done this merging. It's a stupid cost-cutting, in my opinion. And he's making the point that overnight, if you've got a licence fee-funded channel, maybe it should have more British accents. They just shouldn't have merged it in the first place, and you would have an overnight channel with British accents.
I agree with you, Steve. Cressida?
I didn't realise it was overnight. I was going to offer to do more than one British accent. I thought that would help get around it. I like to think I can do a good Leo Kearse, you know, so...
Go on, then.
Okay, I'm Leo Kearse, and that's hilarious. That's pretty good, isn't it?
That's pretty good. Whoa, it's like I'm in the room.
It's like he's in.
The Observer now with more moaning about Andrew Tate being a misogynist. Cressida, put your knickers on and tell us about this one.
Okay. Don't talk to pupils about misogynist Andrew Tate. Government urges teachers in England. So I think we've had similar stories to this before. Teachers are having a very difficult time because there's a lot of misogynistic behaviour happening in classrooms. And they've been told, currently the advice is just don't talk about Andrew Tate. That's the solution, which I think is not very helpful for them. He's described as the king of toxic masculinity. And so there's a charity called Diversify based in Rotherham, and they're trying to help with this. The charity's co-founder, Sarah Cunningham, says that within a class of 30 kids, there's usually about 8 boys, I assume it's boys, I mean, girls can like Andrew Tate too, who are big Andrew Tate fans, and this is causing massive trouble.
Yeah.
But they're not really getting any support over this.
But the problem the left has is they made it so unfashionable to be male, to be a boy. They said, you know, all the campaigns are to empower women, and this girl can, and all the phrases are things like toxic masculinity. So obviously there's gonna be a backlash, and they're gonna get somebody who, you know, they could have had some sort of controlled opposition if they hadn't you know, suppressed anybody who spoke about, you know, maleness in a positive way. Instead, you know, Andrew Tate's popped up, and everybody's flocking to him because he speaks right at their face, speaks truth to power.
Well, we were saying this earlier, that the problem with making masculinity synonymous with toxicology, or whatever the phrase would be, what you then is you've left the space for someone to come forward and defend toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And that's the error. The thing is, defend masculinity. Being toxic anything is bad. That's kind of what the word toxic means in this case. And yet, he's winning the online battle. So I'm not sure they're making the right decision, but let's never address it. Well, when the kids go home and they go online, there'll definitely be some clip that's managed to do well somewhere, because he managed to be a genius of online promotion.
Yeah.
That you're going to lose the row if you don't take part in it.
And a lot of the dads are fans of Andrew Tate as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's just they're whack-a-moling boys, aren't they? Or masculinity, whatever, maleness. They're whack-a-moling it and trying to get rid of it. And unsurprisingly, it's popped up in an unsavoury place.
Could popp up in a good way.
Of course it could.
Pro-masculinity without having to be smoking whilst wearing a dressing gown.
It's too late for that because there's been too much damage, so now it's coming out in these...
I'd like to think we're two icons of masculinity.
I'd like to think that too, Steve, but we're clearly not. Anyway, right, we've all got to go to the toilet, but coming up after we're done, why the Lewis Schaefer diet might be correct, why dog leads are not for stupid people, and the elusive science of stand-up comedy. We'll wash our hands, it's okay. See you in a couple of minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, kicking things off in this section with the Sunday Telegraph, which has some good news for anyone firing up the barbecue this weekend, Steve.
Yeah, maybe it's because it's the Telegraph, but they phrased it this way, that thousands of experts are uniting against zealotry of plant-based diets.
And these are scientists.
Scientists, yeah. I mean, again, this is from the files of Two Things Can Be True at Once. It is true that growing some meat is quite resource-intensive, so maybe remember that as a fact. And you need it, because it's really difficult to replace some of the stuff you get from meat, the B12. Iodine didn't even get mentioned in this, but it was thanks to putting iodine on in cow feed why we managed to get rid of goiters. Like, we just don't have that problem anymore.
What's a goiter?
It's the thing that grows, because it's iodine's needed for your thyroid. And if
like a boo-boo.
Yeah, but it's this huge neck swell.
Oh, my God. And we got rid of it by eating meat.
So do vegan people get that now?
Yes, there's been an increase in the number of goiters because people aren't getting enough iodine.
Vegan people get
really difficult to
goiters.
get on land because it's in the oceans. You can get it from kelp and stuff like that. So they managed to put the feed into cows because it stops cows having problems with their thyroid, and then milk just has loads more iodine in it, so we've all just cured that problem without realising it.
Right.
Lovely thing. But this is just experts saying, well, hang on a minute, maybe just going plant-based wouldn't solve anything. And that's true. Both things are true at the same time. You know,
no, just this thing is true. we've been told that, oh, go plant-based, it's much healthier. And I was thinking, man, that's not going to be... I eat plant. If I have a day and I don't eat meat, I just don't feel like I've eaten any real food. It's not real food. Like, vegan food is the food you put on your plate next to your real food, and then you scrape into the bin after you've eaten your real food. It doesn't fill you up.
Don't know how you got to this. We had a similar upbringing. We both had mothers that fed us lentils.
Yeah.
So I was veggie when I was a kid. I've started eating fish in the last couple of years. I had a vegan phase.
Yeah, but you live in a boat. It's free.
I don't catch it. I've never felt any different. I've been a meat eater when I was a tiny child, and then I stopped when I was 8. Then I was vegan for a while. I've never felt any different, and I eat loads of different.
Your energy's flagging a bit.
Fruit and veg. No, I think we've got so much food in this society that if you're prepared to eat a range, I don't know.
Yeah, we are omnivores, so if you're omnivorous, it's fine. I've got some good news for you, though. One of the researchers said that getting rid of dairy and meat will be harmful to women, children, the elderly and those on low incomes.
And me.
All right.
Also be harmful to me, because I like that stuff. Anyway, moving on, we've got the Mail now with a climate activist who's so angry about a vegan dinner option, he wrote an angry tweet. He must have been exhausted after that, Cressida.
This is brilliant. Extinction Rebellion founder posts furious 391-word, 11-point Twitter tirade after hospital staff served him with boiled carrots for dinner. So you two would get on. So he sounds a lot of fun. Mr. Hallam posted a photo of an almost empty plate. So he posted this picture.
There it is. That's his vegan option.
It's not, though, because...
Well, it is vegan.
Well, yeah, that is, but there were some other food items on the plate before he took the picture.
Potatoes.
Potatoes, yeah. So it's not that it's wrong to complain about the meal, it's the way he did it, and this tirade he's gone on is a bit much.
Yeah, he should have gone with Bupa if he wants, a slap-up 5-course dinner with duck breast. I mean, what does he expect? He's asked for the vegan option in a hospital, which we've just as scientists explaining vegan food doesn't nourish you sufficiently.
Well, it nourishes you enough to do this tweet. He went on to stress that he did not blame the NHS or hospital staff or even the UK's individual policies on the environment. Instead, he said the complete failure of the whole global human system, so keep it specific, to adapt to climate change means the world is headed for mass suicide.
The complete failure of the global system caused him to have carrots on his plate for dinner.
Yes.
That seems a bit ridiculous. Anyway, moving on, the Sunday Telegraph reports that dog walkers are killing us and authorities do have leads to follow, Steve.
Oh, very good. It's the extendable leads are the problem because they are a trip hazard. And actually, I disagree with this story. It's the mobile phone. Because if ever you see someone walking their dog, they've got the dog at like 500 yards on a thing, and they are just not paying attention. I was walking once and saw someone on a bike go through, it was like a tripwire they'd set up between them and the dog, and they were just ignoring it because of the phone. We've got an increase in head injuries because people are falling over thanks to these long leads, and they say just have your dog on a short lead, that way you can't garrot most people in the park.
But then if you have a short lead, I mean, you won't have this problem with people tripping over the long leads that extend out to however long it is, 20 feet or whatever, but the dogs aren't going to be able to run around as much.
No, but I mean, in the old days, somehow we managed to train a dog to have a bit of a run and then come back to the lead. Somehow that worked. I'm not sure quite.
I don't know. Then the dog could maybe savage another dog or a toddler. I've seen these horrible
just at the end of a long lead.
Yeah, long leads don't help with not savaging toddlers. Do you know how long long leads are? They're long.
Very long. And then people trip over them, as we've seen in this story. Anyway, moving on, the Metro reports on the demanding male gaze. I don't mean Elton John and Sam Smith. It's gaze as in looking at stuff, Cressida.
Asking for a friend. Why do I crave male validation? Thanks, Martin.
Did you write this, Chris?
I didn't write this. No, this has got nothing to do with me. So it begins with this quote by Margaret Atwood. It says, we've all heard the Margaret Atwood quote, I hadn't, about how everything is a male fantasy. I don't know if you've heard this. She says, even pretending you aren't catering to male fantasies is a male fantasy. She wrote in her 1993 novel, The Robber Bride. Pretending you're unseen, pretending you have a life of your own, that you can wash your feet and comb your hair unconscious of the ever-present... Anyway, she says that men are always watching. I mean, I am very sexist, and I'm always suspicious of women that say they genuinely like football. But what I think is wrong with this is it doesn't go into detail about what men do, because men are constantly thinking women are watching them, aren't they?
They are.
You lot are always showing off and doing silly things.
Yeah, because women are watching.
Right, so I just think everybody is very self-centred and thinks they're being
Possibly.
watched.
Anyway, I think we've got time for one more story. It's The Observer with a story about trying to make scientists better at dealing with hecklers. Handy for fending off anti-vaxxers, Steve.
Yeah, some stand-up comedians have taught some scientists how to do stand-up. Why? Because some scientists can do stand-up. Where was my phone call? But anyway, 5 scientists they've done this training thing. It does make sense. You can teach people to be funnier. You can teach the mechanics of jokes, you can teach Freud's 4 categories of humour, and then you can practice, which makes you better at stuff. This question of, oh, can you teach funny? No, but you can make whatever funny you've got better, and if you don't have any funny, you've probably got some bigger issues rather than trying to get yourself on stage. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You can teach people to be funny, especially scientists, because I reckon there isn't...
But most comedy courses that I see advertised are just absolute trash. They're just the most garbage comedians who couldn't teach, they can't even make fun of themselves. So how can they be teaching? I mean, there's a few good ones. I think Jeff Innocent does one. Mike Gunn does one as well.
Quick turnaround there.
But, yeah, I mean, there's a couple of good ones, but they're the exception rather than the rule. Did you ever do a stand-up comedy?
Yeah, I did too, and I did too, and they were so different, which I found very reassuring, because I realised, oh, neither of these guys has a clue, and I'll just do what I think.
And did it work? Are you super funny?
Well, it's not for me to say, is it? Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, often it's people that are trying to make a living, isn't it?
It is people trying to make a living. But,
we're all trying to do that.
The show is nearly over now, so let's take another quick look at Sunday's front pages. The Sunday Telegraph has DeSantis, I support Badenoch in our war on wokery. The Observer leads with Starmer, I'll be bolder than Blair on public service reform. The Mail on Sunday has, we are all invited to swear our allegiance to the King. The Sunday Times has Archbishop will ask millions to pledge allegiance to their king. The Sunday Mirror has £150 million on security, hikes up coronation bill. And finally, the Sunday Express has King's solemn vow to serve us all. And that's all we have time for. Thank you so much to my guest, Stephen Cresta. We're back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Roger Monkhouse and Lewis Schaefer and me. And if you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for The Breakfast Show. See you tomorrow.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We